Hey guys, before we start this episode, I wanted to talk to you about Type 1 Lifting. So, Type 1 Lifting is a clothing line that proceeds of the shirts and tanks and everything else goes to the Children's Diabetes Foundation. So, this all came about with me and seeing a 5-year-old girl in the emergency department that had new onset of diabetes. So, just take a look at the website. It's www.type1lifting.com. So just check it out. If you don't buy anything, that's perfectly fine. I would just like for you just to take a look and just see what we have. So, like I said before, www.type1lifting.com. And guys, I hope you enjoy the show. Hey guys, we have a new sponsor for the Type 1 Lifting podcast. The company's called Liberté Lifestyle. So Liberté is a French word meaning freedom, and the company was founded on the desire to have freedom to choose what we want to do with our lives. I actually had the owner, Nicole, on my podcast on episode 28, so if you want to go back and listen to her, she talks about how she started the company and what she wants to do in the future with the company, which is pretty cool. So they actually have knee sleeves, wrist wraps, shirts, shorts. Love the knee sleeves. I have the ice cream knee sleeves, and I love them so much. The neoprene's still good. The seams haven't split compared to other knee sleeves that I've had in the past, and I'm planning to keep these for a very, very long time. So Nicole actually gave me a promo code for you guys too. So it's all capital letters, TYPE, and the number 1. So it's Type 1. So go to libertelifestyle.com, check out what they have in the store, use the promo code Type 1, and save some coin. Now let's go to the episode. All right, guys, welcome to a new episode of the Type 1 Lifting podcast. I have the voice of CrossFit and co-host of the Talking Elite Fitness, Sean Woodland. What's going on, man?
Not much, man. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I listen. I really do appreciate you being on the show.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I've always wanted to talk to you, but I just wanted to congratulate on the little one.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
So, how old is he now? Or how?
He is a year, 13 months now. Yeah.
Oh wow, crazy. So,
yeah.
What didn't you not expect when you had with the little guy?
You know, it's funny. I look back on it, and this is so stupid that I even thought this. Is that, and I had a friend tell me this. He said, you're not a dad yet. Your wife is a mother. She's obviously carrying the baby and already taking care of it, and you're not a dad yet. And I would sit there and I would wonder, am I gonna love it the way that I need to love my kid? Because I don't know if it was gonna be a boy or a girl. And I'm just like, man, I really hope that I have this attachment to it. And the second I saw him, that all went out the window. And I could not believe I was so stupid to even think that. It is a feeling that everyone describes to you, and it's like the Matrix. I can explain it to you, but you don't know it until you really see it for yourself.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite grasp what that was all about until I experienced it myself. And I look back on it, I'm just like, how could I have even remotely thought that I wasn't going to feel the way for my child that I needed to feel? And so it was a very pleasant surprise.
Yeah. So I have a 5 and a 2-year-old. So I know how it is. And the one question I wanted to ask you, when your son was first born, did you freak out when he absolutely messed his diapers and you saw like a different color compared to like what you normally see?
Oh, not really. And because he came out like pooping. Like I remember, I got on my arm and I didn't care. And I think that this is one place where if you're a dog owner and you're thinking about having kids, that's one thing that owning dogs does a pretty good job of preparing you for, is for cleaning up the feces of another thing.
Yeah.
So I was pretty much used to that with 3 dogs. And, 2 of them are pretty big and one's smaller. So I've dealt with that of all, shapes and kinds. So I'm pretty well prepared for that, I think.
Yeah. So is he starting to get his own personality and everything right now?
He is. He's starting to, he's starting to talk a little bit more and learn words. And he's not walking yet, but he's getting close. Still really mobile, crawling. I can't believe how fast kids can move when they're crawling.
Yeah.
But it's getting to the fun point now. It's more, he's not really just a sentient house plant that I have to take different places, and he just sits there, he moves around, and you can play with them a little bit. So it's starting to enter the fun factor.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, it's just wait till they turn like 2. They start like walking and just run all over the place, and you're like, oh my gosh,
man.
where? And then you got to worry about like putting stuff on the counter, and they reach for it, like knives and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
like,
that's already, we've already had that a couple times. You know, just like, oh, got to clear like a 3-foot radius around him, so there's nothing. It doesn't do anything stupid here.
Yeah. So you've been in the CrossFit space for a long period of time. So when did you get involved with, like, when did you start doing CrossFit?
I started doing CrossFit in 2007, and I got into it kind of by mistake. I was working in Jacksonville, Florida at the time, and I was working out just like everyone else worked out. I belonged to a Globo gym, did the standard sort of, you know, Mondays chest and Tuesdays back and Wednesdays this, and, you know, and that was kind of my routine. And a guy who worked with me in the sports department at WJXT, his wife was a personal trainer, and she had just started mixing in CrossFit training to her repertoire. So he was telling me about it. He goes, man, you should really check this out. I go, well, what is it? He said, well, it's really cool. You go to a website, it's CrossFit.com, and they have a workout, and then you just do the workout. And I said, okay, I'll check it out, I guess. And I went to the website, and I was just like, I don't know what I'm looking at. It's like kettlebell swings, and that just doesn't look too hard. Sort of blew it off. And then eventually I got it. I said, okay, I'm gonna go try this. So I'm gonna hire his wife or go in and sign up for some personal training sessions with her, because she worked at like a private fitness studio. Wasn't even a CrossFit gym. Mm-hmm. They had bumper plates and enough though to do what you would need to do to get a good CrossFit workout. And I went in, and, you know, I had never been taught how to squat properly. I'd never been taught how to, you know, Olympic lift, anything like that. So she taught me how to do an air squat, a bad one, but enough to get by, and sort of showed me a rudimentary kipping pull-up, and then worked on some push-ups and just did some other stuff. And she said, okay, we're just going to do 10 rounds of Cindy. I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. And I remember doing that workout and going, like, at the end, I'm going, I don't know how people do this. This is impossible. I'm totally worn out. This guy who works out this way is ridiculous. And I was hooked, because I realized at that point that I'd been doing everything wrong. And I, just like everybody else who gets into it, was in front of the computer looking up all I could find on CrossFit all the time. I was going to the very few websites of gyms that had them out there and trying to find workouts and watching the videos and doing all that stuff. And I loved it, because I finally felt like I was working out the way I was supposed to work out.
Yeah, that's me too. I started it like really late. I think it was, gosh, I was in the Air Force when that happened, and I was doing the 300 workouts, but I wasn't doing it for time. I was just like, just doing it. And then I went to like the Air Force gym, the Air Force gym, and they had a box there, and I got in. They're like, usually we do an on-ramp, but I think you'd be okay. Yeah. So, and I started doing it, and I got hooked. I loved every minute of it. And especially me being 6'6", it's a little bit difficult for some movement. So, but I don't. A lot of ROM right there. Yeah. So, I know you got your level 1 earlier on. Is it so? I believe that's when you started like trying to inquire about joining the media team for CrossFit.
Yeah, that was the second time I inquired. So the first time I inquired was when I was back in California. I was living moved back home to Sacramento. Was out of TV, still doing some freelance stuff for Comcast Sportsnet every now and then in the Bay Area. But I was working in PR and marketing, mostly marketing, advertising for McDonald's, actually. Crazy. And I remember I went to the games as a fan in 2011. And I went with my old college roommate with whom I connected because of CrossFit. Like, we reconnected after, I don't know, was it 20 years? Wow. Which is a weird story. But anyway, we went to the games. And I remember sitting in the tennis stadium, and I'm pretty sure it was the Killer Cage event in 2011. And, they had the apparatus out there, the monkey bars and the watt bikes and the barbells and stuff. And then I saw Rory McKernan and Miranda Oldroyd, and they both had ESPN microphones. And then I started noticing all the TV cameras, and I immediately went, wait, what? Wait a minute. What is going on here? They're actually putting this on ESPN. And that's when I knew, I got to figure out how to get involved in this. Like, this is right in my wheelhouse. So I sent a random email when I got home to, I think it was media@CrossFit.com, explained who I was, explained my media background, things that I've done. Didn't hear anything. And then February of 2012 rolls around, and the owner of the gym where I was training in Sacramento asked me if I'd want to go get my level 1. He goes, I'll pay for half of it. You pay for the other half, and then you can be a coach at the gym and just work out for free. I was like, that sounds like a great deal. Yep. So I went to Reno, Nevada, University of Nevada, Reno, did my level 1, and Pat Sherwood was one of the instructors. And at the time, he was one of the guys who was on a lot of the videos that I had watched, all the update show videos and things like that. So I worked up the courage at one of the breaks to go talk to him and introduced myself, told him what I've been doing, was really interested in getting involved in the media department. How would I go about doing that? And he said, send me your information and I will forward it on. And at the time, I thought he was blowing me off. But to his credit, he did. He forwarded it on. And then, again, I didn't hear anything. And then April rolls around, and I get a call. It was a number I was at work, and it was a number I didn't recognize. And I picked it up. I think it was from Las Vegas. And I picked it up, and it was Rory McKernan.
Oh, very cool.
And I was like, oh, okay. And so I darted out the side door and went outside to take the phone call. And Ro said to me that they were working on putting together a broadcast team that was going to go to Columbus, Ohio, and do the old Central East Regional, because back then they had like 17 regionals. And they were using that regional as a warm-up for doing the games on ESPN later on in the year. I was like, absolutely, I'm in. Like, I don't care. Whatever you want me to do, I'm in. And they had me do play-by-play for the women's competition, and that's sort of how that all started.
Very cool. So how did you prep for, doing the kind of like the warm-up for the regionals with the ladies?
I tried to, just learn as much as I could about the athletes that I could find. There wasn't a whole lot. The resources back then from a media standpoint and things you would need were pretty scarce. So knowing that I was going to do play-by-play, I knew I more had to worry about the who and the what, as opposed to the how and the why. That was going to be Tanya's job. And I had Tanya Wagner, who I've worked with a lot since then, but she was the first person I worked with on a broadcast. And she did a lot of the prep behind the athletes. I just wanted to go and, not totally embarrass myself. But as far as prep was concerned, I just remember trying to figure out exactly what it was we were going to do and learn a little bit about some of the bigger name athletes who I knew were going to be there. So Julie Fouché was one of them. Mm-hmm. And she's the one I remember. There were a couple others, but she's the one that stood out because there was like a hellacious chipper workout that she finished. I think she was the first person to finish. So that just stands out in my mind about that one. But I just wanted to go and not embarrass myself.
Yeah, very cool. And then obviously you got hired and you've done multiple other, regionals, games and stuff like that. And so obviously, I have a favorite one for me that when you've done before, but do you have any like memorable calls on some of the games or regionals that you'd would stick out?
There's so many great moments. I mean, I've been so lucky to be part of just have that seat where I, in the media or the commentator booth. And, the ones that stand out to me are Tia and Cara in 2017, that finish, that was so loud in that building that Tanya Wagner and I could barely hear each other through our headsets. I remember sound kind of had feeling, and just to feel the energy of that building as the two of them went across the finish line. And I remember, of course, getting extremely lucky with the way Rich Froning's fourth played out. That, the way that event happened and the way and the rhythm of it worked perfectly for what I wanted to do. There's Matt Fraser winning that suicide sprint event or winning his heat.
Yeah.
That was a genuine reaction that I had instead of something planned, because I'll have an idea of, I write out kind of what I want to say for final calls, and I try not to do that too much, because you want it special. You want it to be special. You don't want to do that all the time. And there's times I just remember in 2012, I think it was before the double banger event, and just standing up there in the booth, and I can tell you what song was playing. It was Starships by Nicki Minaj, and looking out at the crowd and seeing all the cameras and stuff, be like, this is unreal that I'm standing here right now. I can't believe I'm doing this. Moments like that stand out. But as far as competition is concerned, those are probably the main ones. There was what else? So, there's been some great finishes over in Europe, some invitational moments. It's just more about dealing with the crowd. But I'd have to say, and Ben Smith's finish in 2015 to win it. I'll never forget that. But those would be the main ones, I think.
Very cool. Yeah, the Matt Fraser one with like when he did the sprint, when you like were just like losing it, I was like that was awesome. So
Yeah, that was one of those that was a genuine reaction. That's when I was like, I'm not doing commentary anymore. I'm not doing play-by-play. I'm now a fan that honestly can't believe that this guy just smashed everybody else in an event that he finished 33rd in the year prior.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I mean, it's insane, like where to see where he came from, just doing Olympic weightlifting to now being like the 5-time games championship and now retired. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on him retiring?
I give Matt a lot of credit. I actually admire him for saying enough is enough and being able to go. Not many guys can go out on top, because I don't think there's any doubt that he could come back and he could win another one, and probably another one after that, and maybe even one more. There was nobody close to him, and Tommy and I have talked about this a lot. Is that in the past, even you saw this with Rich, the gap was closing. Rich was still better than everybody, but it was starting to close a little bit. There were some people starting to come up. With Matt, that gap just got bigger. No one was putting the pressure on him. And it's the same thing as Tia. And I do admire the fact that he said, I don't want to kind of be the last guy at the party. I won my 5. I've set the record. I have nothing left to prove. I still have a lot of things that I want to do with my life. And to be able to have that self-discipline to walk away at that point, because yes, he could have won another one, but he would have had to put in a lot of work. And I think he just got tired of putting in all that work. And I admire that, because most people would hang on and hang on and hang on and hang on. So the fact that he had the ability to go out on top and do it, when you think back the way the finish of his last event, arm in arm with Tia Toomey, I don't think it gets any better than that.
Yeah. So have you seen like CrossFit athletes kind of stay a little bit too long?
I don't know if they stay. I don't know if they stay too long, but I think a lot of, how do I want to put this? I think a lot of them maybe think that they have a better chance of doing better at the games than they really do. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of individual athletes who have had a long career as individuals don't want to try their hand at masters because they feel like that's a step down. And I have all the respect in the world for masters athletes who are competitive. They're unbelievable. I'm a masters athlete myself, and I have no idea how they do what they do while, most of them have jobs. They don't train full time, and to be that fit is incredible. But I think a lot of people who have had these, long, illustrious careers, I should say, as individuals, they try to hang on to the individual thing because they know that this is it. I don't want to compete as a master. And maybe they don't realize that their best days are behind them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because I interviewed Nick Urankar, and so I talked to him about like why did he decide to go to masters, and so I believe if I recall it, he said that like it was getting to the point it was just like interrupting his family time, and so and he was gonna go team, but he decided not to because it was the same payout if you won that compared to the masters, and he's like, I'll just might as well just do masters, and he won it, and he didn't. Yeah. He said it wasn't as hard as he thought it would be. So
yeah, I think guys who have competed as individuals and then go to the masters, again, they're still extremely talented, but you just don't have that. The field is not nearly as deep, and then the test isn't as robust.
Yeah. Do you think the masters could but could do the amount of like work that the elite guys do? Or
I don't think so. Just because recovery becomes the issue at that point. I think if you threw, they might be able to hang for the first couple of days, but after that, you just, as an older athlete, you just don't have enough time to recover. And they do a lot of the similar events. A lot of those events that they do are based off what the individuals are doing, but scaled down. They just don't throw as many at them. So, yeah, I don't think that would be wise to give them the full test that the individuals are getting.
Yeah, I agree. So, in 2018, you were on like a big high. You had a couple contracts going, and then all of a sudden, like just CrossFit decided to axe the media group. So, what was going through your mind like during the cut and like after the cut?
During the cut, it really stunk because it was this constant roller coaster. So to back up and give context on that, going into the games that year, we knew that regionals were going away. Mm-hmm. We knew that. What we all thought was going to happen is that they would grab some of these, kind of what's going on now. They would get some of these bigger events to sort of fill that void and still have the same season format where you went open and then regionals, but now put on by these individual operators, like Wadapalooza or Dubai and Granite Games, all those bigger events. And then they would have the games. So we weren't too worried about it. The first inclination that I got that something was, was not right was when the general, what was his title? The guy by the name of Joe Novello. He was I think he was the director of the media for the games. That wasn't his exact title, but that's essentially what he did. General manager for media. He came into my office and he was basically one of my bosses. And he said, "Hey man," I think his exact words was like, "Greg is having another fit." And Greg used to do this throughout the years. We'd hear that he wanted to change the games. He wanted to do this and that. And then he would get talked off the ledge and it wouldn't happen. And I remember saying to Joe in my office, I go, "Well, do I need to dust off my resume?" He's like, "No, I don't think it's going to get to that point, but just understand what's going on." I said, "Okay." We get to the games, and then we heard that, at least I heard that, and Joe told me this, that Facebook had ponied up with a lot of money that was going to basically float the production of all this. And so he said, "Okay, good, we're saved. Awesome, nothing to worry about." Then that first cut, I think it was like a week after we got back, he laid off a ton of people. And that was the first sign that, okay, everyone was shocked. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't have answers. There were rumors flying everywhere. And we basically had these 2 or 3 months, it's like 2 months in just limbo, to where it was like one day we all were getting fired. The next day it was like, oh no, we're saved. Because at the time, once that happened, IMG, the company that owns UFC, they were in negotiations to purchase the games and the media side of things from CrossFit. And we all figured that, well, they'll just hire us. And I actually spoke to their people on multiple occasions, and they kept telling me, okay, this is going to happen. We're just crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's on the deal. We want you to be part of what we're doing. You've been a long time figure there, and you know what's going on, and so we'd love to bring you on board. And I was like, okay, good. I'm going to be okay once this all goes south. And then that kept getting pushed down the road, and it was like, I don't know if it's going to happen. And then I walked out of the building for the last time, I thought was the last time, on December 1st of 2018. And I was still talking to the IMG people. We still don't know what was going on, but it was that constant roller coaster of you'd walk in one day and everyone was totally depressed because they just heard something bad, and that we're all getting fired. And then the next day you'd walk in and it was like, oh no, this is what's going on. And we'd be like, okay, maybe we're going to be all right. And that was the hardest part to deal with, because it would have just been easier to know from the beginning, are we good or are we not?
Yeah.
So and then I think it wasn't until April of 2019, because Tommy and I were at the Mid-Atlantic CrossFit Challenge, which was a broadcast put on by IMG, because it was basically something they had committed to doing, because they thought the deal would be done by then. And it wasn't. It was basically soon after that the whole thing fell apart. And then we were kind of out on our own again.
Yeah, that I couldn't imagine that kind of roller coaster, just going up and down, being like, one day you're good, one day you're like, you don't know.
We just wanted to know. Yeah, just tell us what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Like just tell me. Like that's what I would know. So after you got let go, like do you have any plans or anything like that with like working with the ESPN or anything like that?
I reached out to a couple people about freelance work. Tommy and I had talked about what can we do to stay relevant in the space, because backing up to when he left in October, I left in December. So at that time, the IMG thing was still on the table. So what we were trying to figure out is, how do we stay relevant so that when that does happen, they look at us and they say, oh yeah, you guys are still doing something in the space. We want you on board. And we kicked around the idea of a studio show, and we sort of messed around with it with that Inside Elite Fitness that we did, but we couldn't sustain it because of the amount of time it took to do, the amount of resources, and then at some point people had to get paid. We were all basically doing it for free. And we settled on the podcast. We just said, well, why don't we do a podcast? Because Tommy had wanted to do one for a while. He was always floating that idea, and it never got off the ground. And we said, okay, well, we have the freedom to do that. No idea how to do it. Scrounged up some equipment, just figured out, okay, we'll we'll do this thing and we'll put it out there and we'll see if people like it. And maybe that bridges us for a couple months, and then we can get back in the game, and then that's it. And it obviously became more than that.
Yeah.
And yeah, but the plan at the beginning, when the whole thing went down, my plan was, maybe I'll go to the fire academy. Maybe I'm a little old for that, but I was asking guys I knew who were firefighters here in San Jose, do you think they take me? It's like, yeah, you're in shape. They probably take you. So that was my backup plan. But my wife, I give her a lot of credit. She said to me, she goes, I don't want you to go get a job you're going to hate and be miserable all the time. Give this podcast thing with Tommy a try. You've got other stuff that you're doing freelance, because at the time I was doing some stuff for Rogue, like the Arnold Strongman in Santa Monica, and then I had some stuff for USA Climbing and ESPN. So do that. You're going to be okay. We'll be all right, and just see what happens. So I give Tommy and my wife a ton of credit, because Tommy was sort of the driving force behind the podcast initially, and then my wife kept me from just. I mean, when you have a family, you want to be able to contribute, and she really did a good job of taking the pressure off of me on that, so that I did have time to figure some things out.
Very cool. And now your podcast is like obviously the top podcast for CrossFit. So how many downloads do you have right now? I know you talked about it in a couple of podcasts.
I think we're at 5.2 million
Jesus.
unique. I think someplace around there, maybe a little more, 5.3. But yeah, it's that. That is still, I can't fathom that when I think about it. Like, my head explodes every time I think about that, because when we started, honestly, man, we were just like, maybe we'll get, I don't know, it'd be cool if we got 100,000 in our first year. That'd be awesome. That'd be cool. Maybe we can get a sponsor. And I am so thankful for people that listen to us and that support us. You have no idea how much it means. It really it kept us going.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to it every day, like the podium picks, like just talking about like the news and stuff like that, which is like super cool. And then like obviously like interviewing other people too. So how do obviously you and Tommy like are great together, and I'm actually going to be interviewing him like later on next week.
Oh, good.
So
cool. It's a great interview.
Yeah. So how did you guys like get the chemistry you have now?
I think it's from all the times that we worked together on the desk. And Tommy came in, he didn't have any broadcast experience, but what he did have is he was a big sports fan, and he watched a lot of sports TV, and he understood how the dynamic plays between the host and the analyst, whether it's on a desk in a studio setting or in the booth doing play-by-play in color. So he really got right away what his role was. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that everyone in that department, we were all really good friends. We still are. I still talk to all the guys with whom I worked, and a lot of them are now still involved again through Hamilton Road Productions, the company that is now doing CrossFit's media production. It's essentially the old team that I worked with, which is fantastic. We made it a no-brainer for me to go back and work with those guys. But those are the two main things. The fact that we are already good friends. We have a lot in common. He understands the role. He's very good in his role. Tommy could do my job, but I couldn't do his, because he is so good at being able to recall facts, and he's a numbers guy, and he knows all the history, and he knows so many athletes, and he's the best in the world when it comes to the analyst. Mm-hmm. And it just makes my job really easy. And I can contribute opinions and things like that, and we try to do that on the podcast. But we built that flow and that dynamic through working together as many times as we did in the studio and on regional productions, especially like regionals when we were doing live shows where sometimes it was like, hey guys, we need you to fill 3 minutes, go. So that's I think where that mostly comes from. And again, the fact that we're friends definitely helps.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, and I can't, like, he always remembers these random workouts, and every year it's
unbelievable.
I'm like, I'm listening to him like, how do you remember this stuff? Like, I don't know. I don't remember, like, my old age. I'm 41. I'm like, I don't even remember like half the stuff like 5 minutes ago. So
yep.
It's unreal. But so when did you guys realize that your podcast was like about to explode? Like, just with all these downloads and like the listeners?
I think it was the games of 2019, because we really hadn't been making any money to that point. Mm-hmm. We had a little bit. We had a couple sponsors that bought some episodes. We said, "Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Got a little money." But it wasn't until the games when Tommy drove there with the Buttery Bros, and they had an RV, And then, we parked it in the little RV park that they have there. And then I flew in, but then I would record an episode a night with Tommy, who was working his butt off for Morning Chalk Up. I thought they were going to kill him. He was working so hard. But the reaction that we got from people there, like people stopping by and saying, hey, we listened to you. We love your guys' stuff. We listened to you. Like they were buying shirts. We had shirts there that we were selling. And it still to this day blows me away when I go to an event, I see someone wearing one of our shirts. I'm like, I can't believe that people are still like, this is awesome. So that was the first time when I thought, hey, we might actually be onto something here. And I looked at our numbers from that week and they were pretty good. They were really good. And we hit that goal of, I think, like 100,000 downloads pretty fast. And those were the first really big indicators to me that, okay, we're on the right track here with something. This is going to work.
Very cool. Very cool. So, obviously, like you're a master's athlete now. So how was the Open for you? And like,
oh man,
what's your? I mean, mine was horrendous, but you know,
terrible.
Like what have you been doing like CrossFit wise? Have you been like trying to push yourself or like what's the?
No, I have definitely this past year, like back to, especially with with a son now, a newborn, I get my training in when I can.
Yeah.
It's, I'm lucky if it's if I get 4 days in a week, I feel like I'm a world beater. I have tried to train smarter and not harder. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing for about the past year, because I'm not a competitor. I even if I were to train to be a competitor, I'm not built for it. I don't have the lungs. I don't have the engine. I'm good at a couple things, but Matt Chan, I was talking to him. I was interviewing him for a different podcast that I did for a little while for Two Brain Business. And he turned me on to his Thrive programming, which I think is a great balance for someone like me who's looking to stay fit for life, but also wants to get some good CrossFit stuff in. It's very simple, but very effective. He does a lot of old school bodybuilding stuff in there too, like as accessory work that I miss. I enjoy doing that. So I definitely backed off the intense, hammer myself into the ground day after day and focus more on how am I feeling? Is this making me feel good? It's not about times. Like I came into this Open unprepared for what was going to be thrown at me. I wasn't ready for it. Like 21.3, it was terrible. It was so bad. I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to throw up, and I never get to that point in a workout. I did improve on 21.2, so I shaved 40 seconds off that time, and then I hurt my calf in 21.1. But I just, I haven't been training on a regular basis. Had I been doing math stuff on a regular basis, I think I would have been very well prepared for that. But to me now, it's just like, I'm going to get it in when I can. I'm going to try to stay healthy because I'm 47. So in 3 years, when I'm 50, I still want to be able to do all the things I can do now, run around with my kid, play sports, because a lot of the dads I'm going to be dealing with are most likely going to be almost half my age. So that's kind of how my training has shifted. And it's hard for me because I am very competitive. And that's what I was afraid of with the Open, is that I would do it and then I would see my scores and be like, okay, got to get better. Got to make sure I'm doing bar muscle ups, twice a week. Got to do that. And my wife said, you need to stop. I said, I know, you're right. I know. I knew this was happening. This is why I was afraid to sign up for the Open and do it like this, because I would just want to get better. And so I've had to really talk to myself about dialing that back and just being, man, you're just here to be healthy. You're here to work out and have fun. You're not a competitor. You don't need to go that hard. So, and in the long run, I do feel better. So that's the most important thing.
Yeah. My thing is I'm my own worst coach. So I bury myself all the time. I'm still like trying to chase after the 18-year-olds and try to just try to beat them in workouts. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to redo this.
It's tough, man, because when you're a competitor, you're like, I don't care. Like I've told people, you could line me up against Matt Fraser, and there's going to be a small, little, teeny tiny part of my man brain that goes, all right, how do I beat this guy? That's just the dumbest thought in the history of the world that will go through your head, but it will go through my head.
Yeah. So I know I've heard on another podcast that you actually did roller hockey too. Is it roller hockey for a little while?
Yeah, I played ice and roller. Played ice. Yeah.
Yeah, so you must have gotten the competitive edge and like kind of like that's what made you stick to it. Yeah.
I've always been competitive. Like football, I played in football in high school, and any sport that I ever played in. Like I'm one of those guys. I hate losing more than I like winning, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
So I have really had to be aware of, don't go stepping into situations where that switch is going to get flipped. Because it's just not going to turn out how you want. You're just going to walk away with disappointment.
Yeah, that was like me, like watching my son because he's playing soccer now, and like his team got smoked. But like they don't count scores or anything like that. Yeah. But the other team was like a bunch of ringers, and I'm like, how are these kids kicking it from like the half the field and getting in the goal? And it's just like it gets frustrating, but you realize like these kids have like no idea what they're doing, and
Right.
so it's just like, okay, just kind of, try to coach them and make sure they're okay. And it's not like me playing men's lacrosse and being like, the weekend warriors just go all out, and I'm sitting here,
Yep.
I'm like, listen, I gotta go to work tomorrow, like just
Mhm.
kind of chill out.
Yep.
So very cool, very cool. So I know you guys are like huge Marvel fans, as I
Yeah.
am.
But Tommy is I'm a fan. Tommy is an Uber fan.
Okay, so do you
Yeah.
have like a favorite like superhero movie like you like to watch, or a superhero?
Man, so Tommy would give you like a 5-hour answer on this one because again, he's a huge fan. I loved Avengers Endgame. I thought that movie was about as close to perfect as you could get.
Yeah.
There are things in there that I could nitpick if I wanted to, but I thought that was a worthy ending to the buildup that they had been doing for what was it, 13 years or something?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that 12. I can't remember how many years they built up to that, but I thought that was phenomenal. I love the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. I thought those were phenomenal. The Dark Knight is still one of my favorites. But yeah, I as far as a favorite superhero, I like Wolverine. I'm a big Iron Man fan. I like Thor. So in that whole team, Iron Man team, Captain America, I was one of the few who was on Team Iron Man. But yeah, those would probably be my favorites.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Those are all good. Like mine is like so obscure, like really people really don't know it. So I'm a big fan of, like the Silver Surfer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, like huge fan of him.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just been hooked, and like I love those Marvel like space movies, like Guardians of the Galaxy.
I love Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, that was one I own that movie. I was so pleasantly surprised by that. No idea what to expect going in, and just had a great time seeing it.
Yeah, so when I saw the second one by myself in the movie theater, because like my wife's like, listen, I know you really want to watch the movie, so you go ahead. I'll watch the kids. And like I was laughing so hard, I was like literally slapping the armrest because it's just like just Drax like just talking and like just being
He's
like,
brilliant.
Oh.
Dave Bautista nailed that role.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like I was dying laughing, and like those I could watch those movies like all day.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to. I was thinking the other day because I have Disney Plus and I was watching WandaVision. I'm getting caught up on that. But I looked at it, I'm like, man, I can't wait to sit down and watch these with my son. This is gonna be fun. Yeah, hopefully he's into it. I mean, I'm fingers crossed. Like I'm gonna do all I can to not force, but push him in that direction. And Star Wars as well. So I'm very hopeful that he at least has an interest in one.
Yeah, my son's addicted to Star Wars. Like he's
good.
So little information. He's born on May the 4th.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so he's all about Star Wars. Like if I showed you a picture of his bedroom, like Star Wars bed sheets, Star Wars pictures, Star Wars like everything.
That's great.
And like he's got like the child that's like mechanical. You press his head and starts like putting his hands up and uses the Force.
Oh, so awesome.
So yeah, like he's hooked on it. I mean, and like
cool.
I don't have him watch like Return of the Jedi or like the last of like the newer series because it's a little too dark.
Yeah.
So but he's like 5, so I'm like, okay, you can watch everything else, but like you can't watch those.
Yeah. Now, will you show him the movies? This is the big question, and I know how I'm going to do it. But there's the argument: you go, 1 through 9 in that order, or do you go 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9?
We went through 4, 5, 6 because like New Hope is like PG, so it's not as bad. And so kind of like warming him up into all this stuff. So
also, I feel if you start with 1, you ruin the huge surprise in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Like that's what that is the greatest surprise in movie history, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like my son always asks like, who's your favorite Star Wars character? 5 minutes later, who's your favorite Star Wars character? And it's like, all right, guy, relax. So yeah, like I recommend like going like 4, 5, 6 for those movies.
I think that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and like they're not as violent except for like Return of the Jedi. So like when you saw the Rancor eating that guy, he like just was like,
yeah, that was pretty. Yeah, I remember I was 9 years old when I saw that.
Yeah, and like he closed his eyes. He's like, I can't watch this. And so we're like, and then the newer stuff, I'll like close his eyes because I know the scene's coming up, and I'm like, all right, don't watch that. He's like, is that bad? And I'm like, yeah, it was pretty bad. Yeah, very cool. So, so do you have any goals that are coming up like this year with the podcast yourself or like, business wise?
That's an interesting question. I think for me, so my goal, I'm focused on the main one. Obviously we want to keep the podcast going. Mm-hmm. Tommy and I have discussed about, and not in-depth discussions, but if we were to expand and try to take the next step in the evolution of that, what would it be? And we've kind of decided that we'll do it if it makes sense. We don't want to do it just to do it.
Yeah.
Make things bigger. We're kind of at a good, sustainable level that what we have right now. We're always looking to tweak things here and there, but we want to keep that going, the momentum we have with that. I think the main goal for me would to be get the media and the production side of the games back to where it was in 2018. And that's why I'm really glad that I'm able to be part of the efforts that CrossFit and Hamilton Road Productions are doing together to make that happen. And there's a lot of, I think, really good things taking place behind the scenes that are going to make that an achievable goal. I think that what's really exciting is that for the first time ever, you have the entirety of CrossFit from Eric Rosa on down dedicated to making the games and the media production side of that successful. And that is something that they have never had before. That gets me really excited about being able to get this back to where it was before the plug got pulled in 2018. Because as we tell everybody, that year was the year that we felt we finally got ourselves on the launching pad. Because after the games in 2018, and if you think back to that year, the regionals were on CBS and CBS Sports Network. The games were on CBS and CBS Sports Network. They wanted they wanted the post shows that we had. That's basically why the only reason I was on until December, because we had to finish those post-production shows that they were running, because we're contractually obligated to deliver those. And then in 2019, their plan was all the, every regional weekend, open content between open in the regionals, content between regionals and games, and then games. And that's what we were looking forward to. My goal is to make sure that we can get back to that, if not beyond. And I think that the momentum is driving things in that direction. Fingers crossed.
Okay. And so do you like the way Eric Rose is turning CrossFit into compared to Greg?
Oh, I do. I think that Eric, and I talked to Greg Gaines, who's a guy who works with Eric, at one of the open announcements about this. The sense that I get from Eric is that he is absolutely 100% running this as a business. He's going to try to make money. He has a board. He has to keep people happy. But I think he is willing to make that, not do the thing that is going to make that happen immediately. He's more inclined to do the right thing that maybe delays that gratification. So I'm encouraged about that. I think he's really focused on doing this the right way. I like the fact that he has brought in a lot of smart people and put them around him. He's a fan of the games. He understands the value of media and how the games can help drive people into the affiliates, because that's essentially the affiliates of the lifeblood of CrossFit. They got to get people in there in order for this whole thing to work. The affiliates have to survive. And I think he understands how good media and a good presentation of the games on national television can help achieve that goal. And I think that despite the fact that he has a lot of other things on his plate that he has to deal with, probably, and I think you could argue more important things in the whole scheme of things, he is still a fan. He is still very focused on the games, and he still treats them equally with everything else. And there's a lot of stuff going on, again, behind the scenes that, if you're not an affiliate owner, you might not know about, you might not hear about, because I know they're really focused on giving the affiliates the resources that they need to succeed. Greg was very hands-off, super hands-off. And Eric doesn't want to go in and tell people how to run their businesses. He just wants to give them resources to run their businesses as effectively as possible if they choose to use them. So I think that he's doing a really good job of listening, taking feedback. He has goals, and that he really wants to see the media side succeed and be a part of the whole CrossFit ecosystem, as opposed to something that I think Greg thought was unnecessary and was actually working against the success of CrossFit.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, when Greg had that incident, a lot of people de-affiliated. So how is I don't know if I read it, but how is Eric helping out getting these guys back?
That I don't know all the details. So my sense is that I think they have reached out to those people. I think it's a continuing conversation with a lot of them. And I think he understands that this is going to be more of, I have to show people as opposed to just telling them. And if we stay the course with what we are doing, that they will eventually come back into the fold. Because a lot of people used to ask me when this whole thing happened, and even before it happened, why should I be affiliated? And the answer I would always give them is, well, if you feel like the name is helping bring people into your business, then you should probably keep it. But there were a lot of gyms that I think had built a very successful community that, regardless of what they had on their front door, those people were going to come to their gym because they enjoyed the coaching and they enjoyed the community. So you could get rid of CrossFit. So it didn't make much sense for them. Mm-hmm. So I think that Eric and Greg and his whole team understand that, Greg Gaines, or Gary Gaines, I'm sorry, it's Gary Gaines is his name. Apologize to him for messing up his name, Gary Gaines. They understand that they need to make affiliation something of value other than just the name. And I know they're really working to do that. And hopefully the people who have walked away from CrossFit will see the changes that they are making, see that they are serious about improving diversity and inclusivity and all that, and then eventually come back into the fold. But I don't think it's as simple as, hey, we have a new owner. Oh, okay, all problems solved. Yeah. They understand that there's work to be done here.
Yeah, understandable. So, what are your thoughts on Noble becoming the official sponsor for CrossFit?
I think it's great. I think it's great because they are a company that was essentially born out of CrossFit. They get what the community is about. They get what the community wants. They certainly have a lot of scaling up to do. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that Eric and they would have entered into this agreement without a plan to make that happen. Eric doesn't seem to be a sort of ready, fire, aim type guy.
Yeah.
There's absolutely a plan in place to make this work. And I love the fact, just like when Eric bought the company, to me, it's like he was best case scenario because you got someone who was in the community, who ran an affiliate, who knew what CrossFit could do for people's health and well-being, believed, in the methodology, understood what it was all about, because we could have gotten somebody who just saw an opportunity to make some money, didn't care about affiliates, didn't care about the way things were being done, didn't care about keeping everybody's independence, and that could have been a really bad thing. And I think the fact that they got a company like Noble, who this is it, this is all they got. This is their big thing. It's CrossFit. They do some other things, smaller things here and there, but they are 100% invested in this community. And while Reebok was bigger, obviously, they had their hands in a bunch of different stuff. I think with Noble, what's good about them is while they are smaller, they will be focused 100% on CrossFit and the community.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Yeah, I totally agree. I'm not a big fan of Noble shoes, so I just think they don't look good. Mm-hmm. To be honest, like I'm a Nike Metcon guy, but I mean, obviously, like I've heard stories of like the sizes of their clothes are like not like as big as they want other people, like that people that want to have like double XLs or whatnot. So
yeah, and Tommy interviewed Melanie is his last name. I think he's their marketing guy, and they are planning on doing that. So they just like Eric and everybody else, they are listening to the community and they have plans in place, I think, to deal with that.
Okay, very cool. Yeah. So we're getting close to the end. So I'm relatively new in the podcast space. I've been doing this kind of for like a little bit over a year. So what are some tips that you can, tell me to like hopefully make me become a better podcaster?
I think Tommy and I were very lucky in that we had sort of carved out a space that we were good at, or we were known in the CrossFit world, and we're able to sort of just port that over from the Update Show into a podcast. Mm. So I think that the key is, find a place where other people aren't and fill that need there, because there are, it doesn't matter what kind of podcast you like. There's so many out there.
Yeah.
Find something that makes yours unique and then just stick with it. I had this conversation with somebody else the other night too, who was asking me essentially the same question. And I've just found that the older I've gotten, the secret to success is not hard to figure out. Like it's not some secret thing that you got to do. It's you just have to outlast people. Everything that I've done, that I've enjoyed some modicum of success in my life, it was just because I didn't quit. I just hung around. Mm-hmm. Getting out of college when I went to San Francisco State and for broadcasting, there were guys who were better than me, who had more skills. They were better on camera, but they didn't want to leave San Francisco. They didn't want to do what it took to be successful. I was willing to go wherever, and that's why I took my first job in Kalispell, Montana. I was willing to do that. And then I was willing to take the next step. And a lot of people just bow out pretty quickly and go someplace else. So if you just stick with it and you find that lane where no one else is in, I think that's a pretty good place to start. But again, a lot of people just don't want to stick with it. They want and especially in today's world where everything is so instant gratification.
Oh yeah.
It takes 10 years to be an overnight, to become an overnight success. Like there's a lot of hard work that goes into that one moment. And I think people just don't, for the most part, don't want to put in that time. Mm-hmm. And it's just a matter of kind of, I think I had no other skill. So it was like either this or something else. So I've just stuck with it. And then, be someone who's good to work with. And when someone gives you an opportunity, you take it. And that's the kind of stuff that leads to different connections that will lead you to the next thing.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, I thank you. I really do appreciate you.
My pleasure, man. Thank you.
I wanted to talk to you for a long time. It's just finally I'm getting the cojones to actually talk to try to interview the people that I want to.
Yeah, and I think you'll find, and the great thing about this community is that most people are going to say yes.
Yeah.
That's, and I'm always floored when people want to talk to me. And so thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, if anybody wants to reach out to you, I know you're very responsive on Instagram, but like any other social media or any questions with podcasting or your podcast or whatnot, where can they reach out to you?
I'm on Facebook. I don't use that as much, but Instagram is a good way to get a hold of me. I try to, for the most part, respond to most of the messages that I get in one way or another. But that's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay, very cool. Well, thank you very much for doing this. I really do appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.